Hello, Jen. How are you?
I'm great, Monique. I'm so happy to be here today. Thanks so much for having me.
You're so welcome. I've been wanting to do this conversation for a while now, but I'm glad we did it now because we're going to also be talking about a very special event you have coming up that I'm really excited to learn more about. But before we go any further, I want to go ahead and formally introduce you to everyone who's going to be listening in. So all of you out there, this is Jen Vera. And she currently guides clients into aspects of the divine dark feminine, supporting them into mature leadership that integrates mind, body, heart, and sex. She's a trained shamanic priestess and medicine woman with a strong business, psychology, and somatic background. And her background combines a decade of coaching and entrepreneurial experience, having formerly been a business and sales coach, guiding women into relating with money and their sales differently and in more aligned ways. She brings a lot of grounded, practical practice into her higher spiritual concepts and supports clients in bringing forth more vitality and life force into their lives through shadow work, somatic practices, and pleasure. And right now she lives in Sedona, Arizona, and she's the creatrix of Sacred Rage Party, which we're going to be talking about, the Huntress Retreat, and Sexy Sacred Sales. I mean, my goodness. It's also delicious, Jen. So, Jen, the first thing we do in this conversation is dive right into a fierce moment that you've experienced in your life. It could be recent or in the past, something that you would say, I really had to step out of my comfort zone. I had to show up differently. I had an aha moment and said, no more. I'm not going to be that person anymore. I'm not going to do things that way. What is one of those fierce moments for you?
Well, this is a really special conversation because I haven't shared this too much publicly. I tend to not discuss much of my personal life online. I know some people do, and it's just my personal preference. However, when we were organizing this conversation, I know so many women are going to be able to relate to this, and I feel it's important to bring it forward. So this was a moment I have experienced in my life, going into relationships and just being in dysfunctional relationships. And what I mean by that, it's like I'm overgiving, I'm not treated very well, and I just kind of accept it. And I'm like, oh, this is how I remember talking to a friend once and being like, oh, well, I'm in a relationship now, so it's work. And they're like, I don't think a relationship is supposed to feel like that. And it was such a foreign concept when they said that. I'm like, they're not. And so the fierce moment I had was I was living here in Sedona and I met someone and he was like my dream man, tall, handsome, entrepreneur, like, supposedly, like in my opinion, like had his life together, everything.
Right.
And it was just
Checked
like, oh
off
my
all the
God,
boxes.
this is it. And he, within 4 dates, he's like, come move in with me. And I had my place here, but I was just like, okay, like this is it. And he told me he wanted to marry me, the whole thing. And slowly in that relationship, I started to walk on eggshells. I started to like fear his truck coming into the driveway. I started to, but I wasn't aware of it at the time.
Okay.
It's one of those things where it's like, you slowly begin to disappear,
Right.
and, but I was so in love, I thought, I thought it was filling all the expectations from my childhood where it's like, okay, and like now it's finally, after all of this work I've done on
Right.
myself, it's finally happening for me, right? Like, and he reminded me so much of my mother too. And slowly, like the devaluing came where he was criticizing like after being so in love with me, he was criticizing everything I did. And I was just like, I don't even know what I'm allowed to cook. So I've backpacked through India by myself. I have backpacked through Mexico by myself. I've lived with wolves. I have been on, like, I've had like 4 different businesses.
Right.
I'm not someone who is like just sits in the corner, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not like,
I definitely know that to be the case.
and
Yeah.
here I am, not allowed to leave this man's house,
Wow.
terrified.
Wow.
And I'm like, what is going on? And it just so happened I had a girlfriend visiting me from LA, and she and I were going to talk about doing a retreat together. And I told him, hey, like, I'm going to stay at my place tonight. I need space. And he freaked out and was like, the next thing I knew, all of my stuff was in the driveway,
Wow, Jen.
just like that. And my friend who was with me, she's like, thank God, great. And she was so neutral and she like held the power. And I was just like, I don't know what's going on. I need to go see him. I need to like go coddle him, right? Like,
Right. Right.
and but that was an awakening moment for me, because I, like, for those of you who know, this is love bomb, devalue, discard,
Mm,
is very symptomatic of relationships with people who have narcissistic personality disorder.
right.
This drove me into my dark feminine descent. And I know we're going to get into what the dark feminine is in a moment, but I realized, like, wow, I have been calling in this pattern of relating my entire life,
Yeah.
whether it be with people I did business with, whether it be where I was just saw myself as like the sacrificial lamb and the martyr.
Yes.
And I had to work in order to be loved. I had to prove myself in order to be loved. And then it led me into some dark places I didn't want to go to. And the dark places were my childhood,
Sure.
because I, the daughter of immigrants,
Yep.
Mexican, Cuban. And it's like you're raised and conditioned in a way that's like there's so much enmeshment in the family, and you, God forbid, you are critical of your parents or say anything bad about parenting, like, or
Right.
your parents. It's like so disrespectful. How dare you? You're a bad daughter. All of
Mm-hmm.
these things. But man, my ex and my mom had so much in common.
Wow.
And I remember going to Chicago after the breakup and I was a mess. And my mom's just like, well, maybe if he meets me, then he'll
Oh.
take you back.
Mm.
And she said something like, you know, you're not that, you're kind of difficult anyway. So like, this is probably going to be the best that you can do.
Wow,
Like
Jen.
something along those lines. And I was just sitting there like, it's painful.
Sure.
Like in that moment, like I understood what had happened to me.
Right.
And I understood why I had an attraction
Yep.
for this level of relationship. And that was like the dark feminine descent that started, because I also want to speak to this. I think a lot of polarity teaching with be feminine and be
Right.
submissive were really, really terrible. Like they were, I thought I was being feminine and like submitting to his leadership when he was really just toxic and wanted to control me. And a lot of these relationship coaches, they don't go into the other aspects of the feminine
Right.
that are that Holly energy, that are
Yes.
the ones that do not stand for injustice, that are the protectresses. And I think a lot of this is a distorted feminine because there's
Yeah.
an overemphasis on the light feminine, and the light feminine being beautiful aspects, the nurturing,
Yeah.
the mothering, the caring, the compassion, the forgiveness. All of these are gorgeous aspects of the feminine, but there's an overemphasis of this in our patriarchal culture so that people don't have to take accountability.
Right. Right.
And we have been conditioned to play into this as women for so long. Calladita te ves más bonita. I know a lot of your people might speak Spanish, and that means like when you're quiet, you look prettier.
Yeah, and this is one of the aspects that I think we're all really wanting to wake up into, and that's our voice, being able to have those moments that you had in this relationship, because it sounds to me like it was like a quiet drip, and your intuition was like screaming at you going, what was that? But let me not think about it because it feels comfortable, right? The sad thing is that, we all have to look at our childhood. It's a good thing because it uncovers those patterns that we're used to that make us feel comfortable and safe, even though they may not be, right?
Mhm.
And so he was safe. He seemed like safety to you in some unconscious way,
Mhm.
but your intuition was going, wait a second. And kudos to your intuition because it's really, all of the work that you have been doing, right? And I think that this is a fallacy too, that sometimes we believe, oh, I've taken that course, I've done that work, I'm done. And yet, one of the fiercest things that I think we can do is recognize that we're probably never done. It's shades of healing, right?
Mhm.
And shades of uncovering where I really have it, where I've got it, and this needs a little tweaking still, because the life is going to show us. Life is going to show us where we still need, to do that work. And
Mhm.
and I'm so sorry, Jen. I want to validate how you're feeling because, you know, I'd say little girls and little boys, they want nothing more than the
Mhm.
unconditional love of their mother, you know,
Yeah.
and how hard it is to still be in that space where you're recognizing she's not going to be the one to give that to me, right?
Yeah. And I think that's also just an initiation by spirit.
Yeah.
That's why I feel called to work with the great mother, with the divine mother and the divine feminine. And as healers, it's the wounded healer, it's
Mhm.
when we have such depth of understanding our own wounds, like the level of support that I get to offer the world now, the level of understanding, the level of discernment, the level of nuance because of this is I wouldn't have been able to do this without the experience. And so I do feel like we choose our families, we choose the experiences that we have, even when they're difficult, because like this led me into a great awakening. And I want to speak to a couple of things too, in terms of what you were saying on the healing.
Yeah.
Part of our patriarchal culture is an obsession with the yang expression and an obsession with peak experiences and an obsession with achievement. And this is also where we don't honor the feminine. It's like, it's when we just see these, you were on Forbes 40 under 40, you had this career milestone, career achievement. Okay, like we are so focused on getting to places, on arriving, on achievement. And it's such a non-integrated way of being. And that's not how life is lived.
Right.
Life is lived in the moments. Most people that, who went through a divorce, it's not because they had one big fight.
Hmm.
It's because of the corrosion over small moments over and over. And that is ultimately how life is lived. It's lived in the moments. And that's more of the feminine, but we're
Yeah.
always trying to charge ahead somewhere. And that's also how I got into the relationship, like full ownership. I was in a very immature, feminine, like wounded feminine space where it's like I was the princess waiting, and now my prince has come to save me. I was waiting to be
Same.
saved. And it's
Hmm.
like this, Disney culture that's like, okay, and then this will happen, and then your life will be resolved forever. And it's
Yes.
like, sounds great. So in that, I'm just going to ignore all of the red flags because I'm so attached to this outcome. I want it so bad. And I didn't realize it at the time. Like, I did not know how much I was attached to this narrative of like, and then I'm going to get married and find the one and like have babies and all
Right.
of this, that
Yeah.
I was willing to abandon myself over and over and over and over again for a fantasy, for a projection that wasn't even real.
Yeah.
And that's also, it's a sign of trauma, but it's also like what exists in the culture, which is a lot of emotional immaturity where we can't be with the what is and see it for what it is, because we're constantly trying to fit the narrative into like, this is where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that that's going to hit hit a nerve for a lot of the women in this community as well. I think we've come so far, you know, and our awareness has really expanded when it comes to recognizing the game we've been playing, right? As professional women, as executive women who want to achieve, you know, who want to reach that pinnacle of success as they define it. And we get caught up in that cycle, right? Of it needs to look this way. It has to be that way. This is what success is. And I think, and I love watching so many women really come back down and say, it's okay. It's okay that I'm not on that track right now. It's okay that I take a break. It's okay that I figure out who I am right now, who I want to be right now, and sit with what I'm feeling, right? Because part of that conditioning too is we can't feel. We can't feel, we can't cry, we can't express our rage, which is why I'm so thrilled with the event you're doing. And we get stuck in those patterns too of just keep going, keep doing, you know, don't feel, it's okay, try again and get to that next, you know, stage of success. And we get caught up in that cycle over and over again when really, like you said, Jen, it's that, for me, I call it flow. It's, can I be okay with what is in this moment and still be successful, right? And I get to define what that means. And maybe success today for me means that I'm going to spend a lot of time alone and really think, you know, listen to my thoughts, feel my emotions. Maybe I'm only going to do one thing today, and achieving that one thing feels really good. I don't have to have 20 things on my list, right? So we get to, in the moment, really define what our success is and play with these archetypes, right? The depth of the feminine, and also look at the masculine and what are the variances of that masculine energy as well. So love that. So this may be a good segue into the divine feminine, because it sounds like that is what you discovered in going through this relationship.
Yes. Yeah. Although I think my dark feminine was initiated long before that, with kind of like different variations of the same situation. But when she really landed was after this, because, you know, people ask, what is the dark feminine? And the dark feminine, it's like the 3 lower chakras. And part of what I was dealing with was, because of my upbringing, my validation was very externalized. How do people love me? How the people pleasing, the martyr, I will abandon myself for you over and over again. Just please love me, please love me. It was the shadow side of the light feminine. It was like, and because of my, you know, childhood, I was able to shape shift. Who do you need to be? Or who do you need me to be? I will be that. And relating was a performance. And so in many ways, I did not know who I was until my dark feminine descent. And the dark feminine descent, it's, you are in the dark. That's what makes it dark. And that means that I am not seeing things external to me. I am not hooking into the collective consciousness anymore. The dark feminine is a descent deep into sovereignty and truth. And in many ways, people are like, why do you call it the dark feminine? Because it just, they're hooked into the collective consciousness where dark means bad, but part of the, you know, like there's also great mystery in the dark, and there's great mystery in the feminine.
Yes.
The dark feminine is also where the void is, the cosmic void, where, you know, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about playing in the quantum field.
Right.
The dark feminine, the dark is the quantum. It's the womb space where there was nothing, and all of a sudden there's massive life. There's everything. And the fear that people have with this, because it is a sacred reclamation of so many things, it's a sacred reclamation of yourself. And so there's so much power in this that we've been afraid to access, because I don't want to feel my rage. You know, I never wanted to feel my rage. I was terrified of my anger because of my childhood. Rage was used against me, and I was a sensitive kid. rage was used to emotionally abuse me.
Right.
We're used to, in this culture, a power dynamic where money, sex, power are used over others. Of course, you have resistance with money when we're in this culture, and like certain people, not all of them, but money has been used for slavery, like to justify slavery as an economic, like, of course you are going to feel into what has happened historically and not be able to see the neutrality of money. Of course, when our sexuality is being, pimped out to sell us stuff, and women are used to, performative sexuality where we actually don't have a relationship with our own pleasure, our own bodies. It's like everything for the gaze of the other.
Right.
The constant objectification. And this is a culture that we grow up. Of course, we do not have a healthy relationship with our sexuality, not to mention religious upbringing that is shaming you for your very nature.
Right.
Or, Mexican culture, it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen any telenovelas, but it's like,
Yes.
there's La Virgencita, the Virgin. She's dressed all in white and she's good. And then there's like the dark, evil seductress that's just very sexy and like provocative. And she's like, they're trying to like, they're fighting over the same man. The man never has to take accountability, by the way. It's always like,
yeah,
women. Right. And so it's like, of course, we have these preconceived notions that want to take us, like, that terrify us of our own power. And then, power, how many times have we seen the abuse of power in our culture?
Yeah.
And so the dark feminine reclamation, I'll leave out the mystery school bits and keep it a little bit more basic. If you want the mystery school bits, like,
that's level 2.0.
Exactly.
More like 5.0.
Precisely. But it's really a reclamation of all of who we are, because we can't have that compassion, that fierce compassion, without fierce boundaries.
Yeah.
The dark feminine, through going into our sacred rage, we learn and understand what our boundaries are. We learn to, we learn to understand and honor ourselves in the dark feminine.
Yeah.
And where we're not used to it. But like women, it's like, okay, even our title, like Miss, it, like the word Ms. did not exist until the 1980s, but even like Miss or Mrs., it was so relational to,
Yeah,
are
being
you
married?
Like, do you belong to someone?
You belong
or
to
not?
someone. Yeah.
We didn't have access to like money, credit cards in our own name until the 1970s in America, in the United States. And so when we talk about reclaiming sovereignty for women, there are a lot of cultural and collective and familiar and ancestral things that we do get to decondition, which is part of the dark feminine.
Yeah.
And from there, we find like our wholeness, and we find who we are at our essence, and how does that essence want to express. And that is liberation.
I really love that, because what comes up for me in so many ways, in working with the 5 elements, and even traditional astrology, the 12th house, right? That's the womb area. That's total darkness, right? And that's where we're connected. We're connected to our human life, which, is coming, and we're connected to the divine. It's a really beautiful space. The darkness is nurturing. The darkness is life-giving, and so I love that you've gone with darkness for a couple of reasons. It captures the attention because we all need to realize that there is a layer of uncovering that needs to take place. And in many ways, the only way we can uncover it is separation, right? Separating ourselves from what has been and going into this deep, dark place to really find the truth of, our life. But in the truth, you're never alone. In that darkness, you're never alone. You're always, always connected to spirit. You're always guided. You're always loved. You're always nurtured. And so I'm imagining, Jen, not knowing much about, the program itself of the divine feminine, but that it really becomes a space where not only you're coming to that place of wholeness, but it truly does not feel dark. And at the end, it feels very filled with light. You know what I mean? There's that dichotomy.
Oh, 100%. And that's the thing, like people want to feel, the reason that we chase these achievements is because we want to feel something. And that, I've taught sales for a really long time.
Yeah.
People, our motivation to do things is always emotional. And that's what people don't understand. They will justify it with their logic, with their cognition, with like, I'm doing this because of this and this and this and this and this. But ultimately, we chase things because we're chasing an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get married and then I will be happy. I want to have a baby and then I will be happy. I want to reach this milestone in my career and then I will be happy. I want to buy this brand new Mercedes convertible and then I will be happy.
Yeah.
And so what the gift of the dark feminine is, it's like there's an integration between our light and dark feminine, because it's a wholeness.
Yeah.
And most of the people I work with, and by the way, like I work with men as well on this, because there's a lot of like claiming our actual desires and going for them directly that we are taught to manipulate.
Yes.
Like, it's just like, oh, I'll do this for you because I like you, but actually I want something from you.
Right.
And we're not clear with that with ourselves. And we're not clear with that with other people. And it is manipulation. And we don't want to look at it like that because we've been conditioned to like exist in this way. I mean, I lived in Mexico for a while and like, that's so much of the culture. It's like so relational where it's like, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. There's like kind of this transaction, like inherent in that. But when we learn that we can just desire things and want them and speak them clearly and be like, hey, I desire this from you. Like, it allows people freedom of consent of like, yeah, I would love to give that to you. Versus like, okay, my inner child wants attention, so I'm going to post a super sexy photo of me on Instagram because I want attention. And when I'm going to just like pretend to be mad at my boyfriend because I want attention. And like, versus just being like, I want attention right now.
Right.
And it's not like you have to fill, and this is another fallacy of like, we have to do it alone and like, fulfill it within yourself, sister, be so independent, like that hyper independence. Like, no, we need connection. We need people in our lives. Like, it is healthy. It is very healthy to be in relationship. We are like, not necessarily always romantic relationship, but to be in relationship with others and have that. And when we can do it from a place that's really healthy and loving and clear, it's not bypassing our own needs and gaslighting our own needs, feeling like I want attention, but I don't get to have it. It's like, okay, like I want attention. Great. What quality does that look? You know what? I would just love to be held right now. Or I want to read a story I wrote, or like, I want someone to witness me in this moment. Okay. Like, all right, like, where can I receive that? And sometimes it's like, hey, there's an open mic night going on tonight. And so it's like learning how to fulfill our needs from a healthy way.
Yeah, I love that. And so it sounds like really you doing this deep dive of the dark feminine, reclaiming your sovereignty. One of the ways that we can find the balance, right? Because what I'm hearing is we can get caught up in this cycle, which many women do, and men as well, of I have to fulfill my own. I have to be independent, completely. I don't want any help. I will be sovereign all to myself, but really it's the healthy part of this is finding the balance of the two. And it sounds like hearing you express it is really deeply connecting with the emotion in the moment, right? Like, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I desire. And then the kicker is actually being able to communicate it with confidence, with groundedness, and it creates that beautiful exchange, you know, hopefully if you're with the right person, right? Because I'm also seeing this as, if I show up in this way and it's not mirrored back to me or accepted, then that's probably a good sign that this person is not a good person for me. Am I right about that?
Right. Yeah. Or they don't have the capacity. Like,
They don't have the capacity.
and you know, another reason I call this the dark feminine is because I know that people fear the dark feminine, and like there's kind of an initiation in going into the dark feminine. And part of that initiation is like, she's not for super beginners in many ways, because you do have to go like be radically honest with yourself and radically authentic and not have your excuses.
Yeah.
And I'm responding to you in this way because she takes discernment. And so your question right now takes discernment. Is it that this person can't fulfill? Because a lot of times, like if we have childhood trauma, which I think a lot of us do,
Yeah.
or if we have like, to ask for what you need from someone that you care about is a deeply vulnerable thing.
It is. Yeah.
It's deeply vulnerable. And so if someone says, I can't right now, and your system goes into, they don't love me, like it's like reacting to that rejection of like, the discernment necessary is like, okay, like they don't have the capacity to meet me right now, and they've met me in other times, and they are actually like really overwhelmed with some personal things, and I can honor and respect their sovereignty, and I can respect where they're at and understand that this person cannot fulfill all of my needs. How can I also get those needs met? And this conversation is like, it's not sexy. What we've been taught is sexy is like, you find the one and then they fulfill everything that you could possibly desire. And by the way, they anticipate your needs. They take you to Greece, they feed you grapes, they fan you. You know, it's like, and it's just, okay, but where is that person's sovereignty? Where is that person's like, I believe in sacred union. I believe that, you know, the feminine can be on her knees in devotion to the masculine, and the masculine can be in complete devotion where he would give his life for the feminine. I believe this. And it takes a high level of discernment and understanding and reverence for our humanity, for the other person's humanity, and for our own humanity, to really have that kind of dynamic exist and live in a way that's healthy and in a way that's not collapsing or enmeshing into another. It's like a
Yeah.
healthy interdependence.
You said it. It's healthy, and we have to work on our own health, right? Both parties in this partnership. And we do have to achieve that level of interdependence. I mean, it's a beautiful thing when that happens. How often are you seeing that happen in working with others, in just your experience of doing this work, in maybe the relationships that have shown up for you since this fierce moment?
You know, I am still in a place of like, I'm healing in a way.
Yeah.
And so the relationship I talked about, that was in late 2021. And so we are in May of 2023. And what I've seen in my own personal experience is learning how to be in more discernment, because that was a very, very big, there were very obvious abuse that was happening. And so now it's like something tiny happens, someone doesn't keep their word, and I'm like, and I don't know them that well. And so it's like, it's a difference between when you know someone and like there's grace, you know, but then it's like, oh, okay. Like what's going on is the discernment is like far more precise in my experience, and I'm relating in the world in a way that feels much safer for me, much more self-expressed, much more authentic, much more like, before I was just like, oh, you want kids? I want kids too. And the truth is, like, I don't really want to have children. Like, like, I'm good.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would abandon myself so to shapeshift so that I would be liked so much that there is still a process that's happening. And this is just really real with like, I know that like the sales end is like, okay, I was this and now I'm this and you could do it too. And that hasn't been my journey. What I've seen with my clients, because I'm not a relationship coach, but I do teach you how to relate to yourself
Yes. Hmm.
so that you can exist in relationships, whatever that looks like for you. So, a couple of things. One, I do think that we are all individual beings that have, individual templates of what works for us, what our needs are, and what don't work. And I think in understanding our needs, we have a greater chance of finding relationships that can actually meet it when we're actually really, really honest. So,
Right.
what I've seen with my clients is just like they're not trying to fill themselves anymore.
Hmm.
Whether that was with achievement, whether that was with sex, whether that was with like
Yeah.
relationships, it's like there's a peace and a trust with the unknown and with life and with co-creating in life that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
There's when we go into the dark feminine, we heal the wounded feminine, but we also heal the wounded masculine that seeks to try to control everything in our environment so that we're safe,
Yeah.
And so there's less trying to control, less hypervigilance, less of that. And there's more overall peace because if I know my danger, if I know like my power, I don't need to go around trying to control others or go around trying to prove my power. I don't need to knock people down. I don't need to engage in these things so that I can prove how powerful I am. That's what the powerless do.
Right.
It's like when you know that you are a lion, lions hang out, sleep like 20 hours a day, and they don't worry about anything and they can just chill.
That's
And then
that's what I want.
they hunt when they need to hunt.
Beautiful. Yes.
When someone is threatening them, they fight. But
Hmm.
other than that, they just hang out. They love each other. They hang out in their
And you
quiet
can
time.
sense that. You can really sense that. And I when I was growing up in the workforce as a young executive, probably one of the youngest executives in like a group full of, high toot and flute and smart people, that I always felt I needed to prove myself, right? Like they gotta understand why I'm here. They have to understand that I can contribute, that I can, say something powerful. And in the beginning, it was like that. It's like, and then over time, as you learn these valuable pieces of information and do the work, and you can source your power as you're speaking to, it's just amazing how comfortable you can feel and in your authority being in a space like that and not having to say a word and not caring if anybody is wondering why you're not saying a word. And it just, and when you're in that space after having done that work and you experience another person kind of doing the opposite, it's astounding, you know.
Yeah.
So feeling and being able to sense someone's power without having to say a word. And then when you do speak, you hear that person's truth, you hear their authenticity, you see and feel their contribution. It's quite extraordinary. Yeah.
And people respond to it. There are
Hmm.
so many leaders that are kind of it's like for the feminine, it's like this quiet power
Yeah.
and that's the other thing that has like really drastically changed for my clients is embodiment.
Yeah.
Again, because of our patriarchal culture, we're like obsessed with intellect, obsessed with the mind, obsessed with making sense, and it cuts off so much of ourselves. And that's where sexuality comes into play, like where it's our level of embodiment, our level of like, is the truth just in here where it's there's like a difference between knowing and knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And when we actually know with our bodies, we can actually experience safety wherever we are.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, when we're trying to do mindset work and we're just like, I am safe, I am safe, I am safe, and like trying to like do all of the things and like mindset and analyze. And, Tony Robbins is amazing. He is one of the, grandfathers of personal development in our world. And so much of it is this analytical mindset work of like, what's true, what's not true, neurolinguistic programming, like a lot of the coaching modalities. And again, it's just like our culture has been, it's a disregard to the feminine, to the wisdom of the body. And we
Yeah.
now know the body keeps a score. We now know that trauma lives in the body. We now know that like, we have to bring the body along. I used to work with clients so much in sales and like money mindset. And it's like, if they would constantly be up and down unless they knew the wisdom of their body that wants that expansion and wants it in a sustainable way. When we bring the body along, it's sustainable. When it's only in the mind, we're constantly like, okay, I get to have a $20,000 month. I get to have let me okay, law of attraction, let me do all of the things. And again, we're trying to control
Yeah.
constant hustle, even if it's not like the hustle, we're just constantly in the state of control and
Yeah.
hypervigilance versus like being able to rest in our power, rest in our desire. And so ultimately, what I help clients with is embodiment,
Yeah.
is like going into the body and experiencing themselves in a completely new way. And instead of like, okay, I have an awareness that I have this trigger. And so it's like, I had a triggering experience and it was a level 2. And in the past, the same thing happened to me and it was a level 10. That's because we worked on the level of the body. You're not having to constantly manage or control things anymore.
Yeah.
And that gives
And that's where just even creating space for it, right? Because you're speaking to the way we operate in the workforce. It's all the mind, it's all strategy, it's all, goal setting, it's all checking off the list. And we don't create the space to actually feel ourselves, to sit with ourselves, to pause and actually connect with, is this something that I want to do? Right. And I'm a big fan, huge fan of Esther Hicks and Abraham. And they can be, a lot of people who don't go deep enough with their studies would say that, oh, they're just telling you to be positive. And that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is we can attract that which we desire. I want a $20,000 day, right? But we don't attract it from here, to your point. We attract it from here. And so, they're the first to say, when you're not in alignment, when you are thinking that you want a $20,000 day, but you're not getting it, you have to go be happy right now. You have to go feel rich right now, right? And so the little lesson in that is, what makes me happy? Well, drinking a cup of coffee makes me happy. Well, great. Go grab your cup of coffee, sit outside and just think of how beautiful this day is, how abundant you feel sitting here, just sipping on your coffee and not, rushing, not, thinking that you have to do 10,000 things right now. And so the embodiment is so critical in all of these practices that we're talking about. I know we're getting short on time. I can't believe it's already been 15 minutes, Jen, but I want to talk about two things. First, talk to me about your event coming up, because I think this is so important. And what I want to say is, we shouldn't have to go to an event to do this, and I know that when you and I when we were, exchanging sessions, that was one of the things you had me do, right? Was get into my rage. And I valued that so much, because I have to say that, a part of me growing up too was listening to that voice of, no, we don't get mad, we don't get angry, we don't show our rage, right? And so, such a beautiful practice. So why are you doing this event? Why did it come, why was it birthed out of you? And tell us about it.
Yeah. So sacredrageparty.com. I am teaching people how to, in a healthy way and through their bodies, experience their rage. And I'm also teaching people how to get into their rage, because I had no idea how to get into my anger at first.
Yeah.
And so we're going to go. And why is this important? Because, like, listen, it's not a great selling point. Like, hey, let's feel rage together.
Mhm.
Rage and anger are deeply uncomfortable emotions, and for good reason. They're uncomfortable so that you can see how much you are violating your own boundaries, your own agreements with yourself. Like, when we're angry with ourselves, it's telling us something. Our emotions are always honest. They're always communicating something to us. And in our culture, especially with women, it's like, be a good girl. Oh my God, she's an angry, or no, like the angry feminist. Oh, she's angry and she's bitter, and like, be afraid of her. And like, no, none of us want to be that way. And yet, so what that creates is like, we suppress, we stuff down, and then we are passive aggressive or resentful. And the thing is, energy doesn't lie, it's felt. And so even if you're just like, I'm fine, I don't need to feel rage, I'm cool, I'm gonna go and like love and light y'all all the time, all of this, like, you can do that until the cows come home, but your energy doesn't lie. And the way that it's going to come out is going to be in far more subtle, toxic ways versus just owning, like, I have rage, I'm angry. Let me allow myself to understand what I feel angry about. Oh my gosh, I took on way too much, and I am sacrificing my own body in this. And my body's exhausted, and it's been trying to scream, it's been trying to talk to me in whispers, and I actually haven't been listening. And so now that I know this, and now that I've expressed my rage at myself for agreeing to take on all of these projects, for agreeing to like be on the PTA, for agreeing to like take the kids and like, for like being good, or for the like, whatever it is, I'm using that as an example. I now know what my body needs and how to care for myself. And the level and depth of rage that you go to is also the level of depth that you've abandoned yourself. And when you know this and you experience it through your body, it alchemizes something and you can't unsee it. And therefore you begin to behave differently. Someone asks you to do, like, you just felt like all of this like anger and rage. Someone asks you to do something and it's like, I am so sorry, I can't commit to it, versus what you used to be doing in the past. And so the thing about rage, and the reason people, fear it a lot, is like, we have negative connotations with it. Road rage, it's a terrible thing, it kills people, whatever the case, right? That like is told to us. And when we get over that, rage is actually, it's a fire emotion. And I know you work with the elements. And so like rage, anger, those are fire emotions, and fire is alchemical. It transforms anything it comes into contact with. And so what we really fear in feeling our rage is we fear change. Because when we experience our rage, it's like, guess what? I am no longer available for that shit. I'm no longer available. I'm not, like, no, no, and no. And maybe there's a part of our good girl that's like, oh my God, I'm going to lose love. No one will care if I don't do this for other people who and I'm speaking from my own experience. And so this is why we resist rage. And this is also the gift of rage. And the gift of rage, it's like that quiet power that you have. It's like, you don't need to ask me if I'm a yes or a no, you will feel it. And sometimes it's like, we don't need to have a conversation about that. And what it does is like, it seals up your field. So it's like, I'm not available for this. And therefore I'm no longer attracting that, because I actually somatically sealed up my field. I allowed myself the full expression. I know the preciousness of my energy now, of my body. I'm not going to violate that because I went to the depths of it. It's similar to grief. When we allow ourselves to fully feel grief, we then know how deeply we are capable of loving. And we're a lot more discerning about who we love. We're a lot more discerning about who gets to be in our life. And so, Sacred Rage Party, we are going to learn how to rage with ourselves. It's a virtual party. It's going to be really potent and powerful. And you're investing in you. And you're going to feel, there's like a runner's high that you get after like you really have a good rage session. And it's also how to contain your rage so it's not towards anyone else. So
Right.
it's not, so you're not like sending these energetic arrows of
Yeah.
anger towards your enemy. You're resolving with you,
Yes.
and how to energetically like contain that so that like it isn't something that's violent towards others.
I love it. And when is it happening?
It is April 19th. There will be a recording. It
Okay.
is 1 o'clock Pacific, which is what, 4
4 o'clock.
p.m.
Okay.
4 Eastern. And we'll be together 2.5 hours or so.
Okay.
Like we're gonna get into our, like, don't worry if you don't feel rage or anger. Like
You're
I'll
gonna help us
trigger that
find it.
within you. Yeah, we'll get into it. And then we'll learn the modalities of how to express it. And then we will go into, I'll have some music playing, we'll go into it, and then we will, come together and seal up that container and close and share experiences.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm gonna take a look. I know I looked at the date originally. I'm like, gosh, I don't know if I can do it. And so I'm gonna look at it again because I definitely want to be there. But I'm assuming you're gonna have more and more of these. It's not just a one-time thing.
It depends. Like it might just be a one-time thing, but there will be a recording.
Okay.
I think that's it, so that people who purchase it can be like, okay, I want to rage and I don't want to. Sometimes it's easier to have someone guide you into
Yeah.
it when you know that you need it, because it's hard to go into the denser emotions by ourselves. It's like it takes a lot of courage to actually truly go there. And when we're that's a gift of like having a rage party, when we're with other people and like they're all engaged in this, it's like the energy builds, and we also have like radical acceptance for the emotion. We'll hear like, probably hear me screaming and grunting and like whatever. And like it's like, oh, I have permission to fully express
Yeah.
today.
Beautiful, Jen. Thank you. Thank you. So, I mean, we're like at an hour pretty much. I guess a last question would be, I mean, you've done so much work. I remember when we both have, right? Like we're not who we were when we first met each other, and that's a beautiful thing. And I love seeing that when I reconnect with people. What was it that kind of opened you up to really doing all of this internal work and not living in that space that you were living in before, right? Like above the surface.
I mean, I've always been very into spirituality, and I always felt like a strong spiritual connection. I was able to sense my deceased grandmother as a child, like, and I know that you have similar gifts, and I was just obsessed with God in so many different ways. Like at 15, I became a born again Christian, became a Buddhist when I was 18, learned how to meditate, got into shamanism, got into plant medicines at a very early age, at like 19, 20 years old, started working with the Mexica in Chicago, like the Mexica Aztec. And so I feel like I've felt, and then I started yoga. Like I have been, spiritually promiscuous in the
Right.
ways that like I've got, but I feel like I've always felt this call of God,
That's
and
a
I've
great way
always
to
felt
put it.
a
Yeah.
deep
Yeah.
connection. And so
Mm.
what got me more into the formalization of like personal development was really entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I knew I was ambitious. I knew I wanted to do something, and I was like, oh wow, like I'm watching, wow, like someone is doing, they're fully self-expressed and they're making money.
Right.
How do I do that? And then, there's like all the mindset work on self-expression, all the mindset work on money, all like, so that was my gateway drug, was entrepreneurship, hiring a business coach, and like learning that it's not just building skill set. It's like myself as a holistic being that I bring into entrepreneurship, because it's
Yeah.
like the only one to like, it's no longer a boss to blame or like
That's
a
right.
strategy to blame. You were the one to like, not blame, but you like, it's all you, and
It's
the
all
radical
you.
responsibility that entails. And so that's how I got into it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. And if you could share, like, obviously, like myself, you've learned so many different practices through all of the different, modalities that you've been through. But is there one practice that has sustained you and helped you kind of stay in that space, in that grounded space, being connected, to spirit, to God?
Okay. I feel like I like variety, so it's like what my flavor of the week is.
Yeah.
And one practice is morning pages. This is coming
Hmm.
from the book The Artist's Way.
Yeah.
And you write 3 pages, no more, no less. And there is no formula. Like you're not writing for anyone. Like it's you with you. And sometimes you just get up and you're just like, writing like, I think it's so stupid that I have to write these pages. I don't know why I make myself do it, but it's like, it's an opportunity for you to deeply listen to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think, from my childhood, giving that to myself and prioritizing that to myself, it has led to so many deeper layers of what's alive right now. Like I woke up feeling really cranky today and I did my
Right.
morning pages and I'm like, okay, like I have a sense of what I need right now. And I was able to reach out to some friends that like I know have my back and ask them like, hey, you guys, I need some reassurance right now. I feel a little lost with this. And I feel like just, what's underneath the
What's
crankiness.
underneath? Yeah.
And so it's intimacy
Mm.
with myself. And so morning pages are one of my favorites. And I love somatic. So
Yeah.
I come from more of a tantric like lineage in terms of spiritually. And so we do a lot of like
Yeah.
shaking and movement and shaking the
Hmm.
spine and like moving things out of us and like resetting the nervous system through the body. And
Yeah.
I feel like just organically, I do that a lot now. Like I don't even think about it anymore, but I'll just be like,
Shaking. Yep.
okay, yeah, exactly.
Love it, honey. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here today and sharing what you're up to, sharing your fierce moment. I know it's not easy, and I know that I get this a lot when I ask people the questions like, oh gosh, I think I have so many moments. And I like hearing that. I like that we have a lot of fierce moments because that means we're doing the work and we're slowly getting to that place where we are being ourselves, our authentic selves, using our authentic voices, and slowly becoming the embodiment of who we are meant to be. So I honor you. Thank you for being here today. And I will be posting the links that you shared with me so that everybody knows how to get in touch with you and hopefully join the Sacred Rage Party.
Or
So,
my Huntress retreat in
or the
Sedona in
Huntress
October.
retreat. Yes. In October, you
It's
said?
powerful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. I will talk to you
Thank you so
soon.
much.
You're
All
welcome,
right.
honey.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.